On May 11th, 1997, Brenda Carlin died. She was 56 years old. The cause was liver cancer, diagnosed not long before the end. She and George had been together for 36 years. People who knew him well waited to see what would happen next. They had watched him through the transformation and the drug years and the bankruptcy and the slow rebuilding. They had seen what he looked like when things were bad. They waited to see what grief looked like on a man who had spent his life being honest about everything else. What happened was, he went back to work. Brenda Hosbrook had met George Carlin in 1960 in a Fort Worth radio station where they were both working. She was 20 years old. He was 23. By the accounts of everyone who knew them in those early years, the attraction was immediate and mutual, and had a quality that was slightly unusual for the entertainment world they were both moving through. It was uncomplicated. Not without difficulty, not without the ordinary friction of two people building a life together, but uncomplicated in the fundamental sense that they were, from very early on, genuinely interested in each other. They married in 1961. Their daughter Kelly was born the following year. The family moved as Carlin's career moved, to New York, to Los Angeles, through the hotel rooms and club dates and television appearances of a working comedian's itinerant life. Brenda was not a passive presence in any of this. She was sharp, direct, and entirely unimpressed by the performance of celebrity that surrounded her husband's career. She told him when he was wrong. She told him when the material was weak. She told him when he was performing a version of himself that did not match the person she had married. He later said, more than once, that she was the only person who had ever told him he was full of nonsense and been right every single time. This was not a small thing for a man who made his living being certain about things. The transformation of the late 1960 seconds and early 1970 seconds, the growth of the hair, the loss of the Las Vegas contracts, the years of uncertain income while he rebuilt the act from scratch, was not something Brenda simply endured. She was part of it. The conversations that shaped what Carlin became in that period happened, in large part, in the private space that she created and maintained. She understood what he was doing before most of the industry did. She thought it was right. The drug years were harder. The cocaine use that accelerated through the 1970 seconds and deepened in the 1980 seconds was not something Brenda could simply support or encourage. She watched it. She worried. She said what she thought. She stayed. The calculus of why a person stays in a difficult situation is never simple, and it would be wrong to reduce what she did to either loyalty or suffering. She was a person making ongoing decisions in complicated circumstances, and the decisions she made kept the family together through years that broke other families apart. The bankruptcy came in the late 1990 seconds, a financial collapse driven by years of mismanagement and the costs of the drug use and the gaps in his career. By then, Brenda was already ill. The timing was brutal in the particular way that timing is sometimes brutal. The money crisis arrived just as the health crisis was becoming undeniable, and the two things together created a pressure that would have broken most people. Carlin was not broken. He was changed. There is a difference, though from the outside it can be hard to see. Kelly Carlin, who watched her parents' marriage from the inside and wrote about it with unusual honesty in her memoir, described her mother as the structural element in the family, the person who, through the force of her attention and her presence, made it possible for her father to be who he was. This was not a flattering portrait of a supportive wife. It was more complicated than that. Brenda was not simply enabling her husband's career. She was, in Kelly's telling, the person who kept the household anchored to reality during the years when her father was, in various ways, not. She loved him. That part was simple. Everything else was complicated. The love was not. She was diagnosed with liver cancer in 1997. The illness progressed quickly. George was with her. He did not go back on the road during those months. He was present in the way that people are present when they know time is running out, and they have chosen to spend it in one place. On May 11, 1997, she died at home. The obituaries noted her age and her marriage and the length of their time together. They did not capture, because obituaries rarely do, the specific texture of what had been lost. The woman who had told a man who made his living from certainty that he was wrong, regularly and correctly. The woman who had stayed through the transformation and the drugs and the money and the fear. The woman who had, by her daughter's account, made it possible for her husband to become George Carlin. He went back on the road within months. What came after Brenda's death was, by any fair assessment, some of the most ferocious material of Carlin's career. The HBO specials of the late 1990 seconds and 2000 seconds, Complaints and Grievances in 2001, Life is Worth Losing in 2005, It's Bad for You in 2008, have a quality that his earlier work, for all its brilliance, did not quite possess: a specific kind of anger. Not the anger of a man performing indignation for effect, but the anger of a man who has stopped being careful, who has weighed what there is to lose against what he wants to say, and decided, with some finality, that the loss is acceptable. People who knew him in those years noted the change. He seemed, in certain respects, less interested in being liked than he had been, less willing to leave the audience with an exit ramp, a moment of release that allowed the discomfort he had created to dissipate harmlessly. The material got harder. The silences got longer. The laughter, when it came, had an edge that older Carlin audiences sometimes found disorienting. He was 60 years old when Brenda died. He worked for 11 more years. He performed, toured, wrote, and kept adding to a body of work that was, by the end, among the most significant in the history of American comedy. Whether the ferocity of those last years was grief or something else, anger, clarity, the particular freedom that comes when you have lost the person whose opinion mattered most, is not a question anyone can answer definitively. Kelly has written about it. Jerry Hamza has spoken about it. The people closest to him have offered different accounts of what he was like in those years, and the accounts do not perfectly align, which is probably the truth of things. He married Sally Wade in 1998, a year after Brenda's death. He had, in the years of Brenda's illness, promised himself he would not get involved with anyone for at least a year. He kept the promise. Sally was, by his account, and by Kelly's, a genuine partner in the years that followed. Different from Brenda in important ways, similar in the ways that mattered, and present for the final decade of work that Carlin produced. But Brenda was the one who had been there from Fort Worth, the one who had watched the transformation from inside it, the one who knew the before and the after and the long, difficult middle, the one who had told him he was full of nonsense and been right. He did not talk about her loss the way some people talk about loss, with the language of tribute, the performance of grief, the careful public management of something private. He was not built for that. He talked about her the way he talked about most things, directly, specifically, without decoration. He said she was the smartest person he knew. He said she had no patience for dishonesty, including his. He said she made him better, which, for a man of his intelligence and his pride, was not a small admission. On May 11, 1997, Brenda Carlin died. George Carlin went back to work. What he made in the years that followed is what we have left of what she gave him.